The sleeper has awakened. Welcome to the Film Trap Podcast. I am Chris Gore. If you've been listening or watching this podcast, you probably already know that I am a huge fan of Dune. I read it when I was a kid. The first book, it didn't look like this copy of Dune, but I read it when I was I must have been like 14, 15 years old, and then read it every year through high school. Changed my life. The David Lynch movie came out. Not exactly what we were all expecting, but I went on to read many other books through the series, and it is a story that has so many layers. It's the smart version of Star Wars. It's Game of Thrones in outer space before there was a Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, I think, really was quite influenced by Dune. But I am pleased to have today, if you have not heard of this podcast, it is called LPN Deep Dives Dune. You can find it on Spotify. It is a must listen for any Dune fan, or if you just enjoy, you're sort of diving into the world of Dune. You want to I guess that's why it's called Deep Dives. You're just getting into the world of Dune and you want to have someone kind of walk you through the book. It's almost like a book club. And the two gentlemen that host this podcast, oh my God, I've just now met them, 30 seconds, and they're hilarious. I have to listen to episodes twice. So much going on. Henry Zebrowski, Holden McNeely, welcome to the Film Trap Podcast. Guys, this is I don't know how many other Dune podcasts there are, but they should be humiliated and bow at your feet at how.
Don't even start this war. Don't start this war.
Do not bring the Dune army against us, all right?
Really?
I will say this just as if, and I'm going to start like this, just like Aaron Harkonnen underestimated the amount of Fremen in the hills of Arrakis, you do not want to underestimate the ones in the hills that will band together and come towards the cityscapes.
It's a celebration. I mean, you've got club mixes of quotes from the David Lynch movie. You've got you do little sketches, and then additionally, you kind of take each chunk and then break it apart into things. It's I've read the first Dune book 5 times, and I listened to the new audio interpretation that came out that's on Audible, which is very good. They actually hired actors of different sorts.
They did.
Oh, that's cool.
How did this come together? What was your and I'm not sure, you may have addressed it because I haven't listened to all the episodes of the podcast yet, but it's where did your Dune fandom come in, and what was your entry point, so to speak?
Well, I guess I'll start this journey, Holden. I was the one obsessed with Dune.
The journey starts with you. Yeah.
I was the beginning, the end, the spice cooks within me. I first read Dune in high school, the first Dune, and I was into it, but I didn't read the rest of them until when I was about 21 years old. Me and my buddies, we were a part of the same sketch group, Holden and I, and all of these guys, or it was a sketch group called Murder Fist, and we found the Dune series together, and then we just read it as a group, and so it became a group, sort of we all became obsessed with it, and then it kind of went with me to my other shows, to Last Podcast on the Left. We wrote a special for Netflix, a comedy special for Netflix, the characters that has a whole Dune section in it. I believe that we're the first people to do a Dune-based sketch. That's why I will plant that flag in the dirt.
On the Dune moon, yeah.
On the Dune moon. But it really came from that obsession, because that really was when I found a lot of arcane sci-fi, and the books past Dune 1 are fit into the world of arcane. Mm-hmm. That's what I really enjoy. It's very heady shit. But I have been very obsessed with it for so long, and then I've sort of dragged Holden into it.
So yeah, for my sake, I hate doing what everyone's doing. I see everybody using a word online. They're like, all the feels or something like that. And I'm like, I hate all the feels, right? I hate that phrase because everyone uses it. So when everybody was reading this book, when we were in our 20s, I was repulsed by it. And I was like, I'm a fantasy boy. I like my Tolkien and my, my sort of flim-flam of that nature, and always kind of bounced off of sci-fi. But then later in life, I literally picked it up because I was working so much with Henry on comedy, things like that. I feel like when you're working with someone so creative, you can't really deny their influences like that. So I've always said this, I literally picked up Dune to understand Henry better. And so I started reading it, and it really was, I do feel that people are not super incorrect. We even found this in our, we recently did an episode on the author himself, Mr. Herbert. And we found that even originally critics said, oh, this book is like impenetrable. No one should read it. And then it slowly became popular with colleges and stuff. And I think there really is about 100-page to 200-page point of entry that it takes. Once you get past that, it becomes really, it is just like his mini tests in the books themselves. It really feels like a bit of a test. There's a lot of language you don't understand. There's a lot of, you almost need like a dictionary of Dune words just to get through it. And then it kind of clicks in, and then it's like, oh, wow, this is like one of the greatest series ever wrote, right? But it definitely takes a while. So I feel like that's what I can bring to the podcast too, is just the sense of like, you don't have to be a short little angry man to enjoy this book series. You don't have to just be this little weasel man.
Attack you.
No, but I feel like that's kind of the idea, is that like this really can be an amazingly enjoyable series for everyone. I think for a very long time it has almost been, it's almost gate kept itself from a lot of people, and I want to be here to say, hey, honestly, give it a shot, because it becomes like everything at a point. It becomes so good in all these great ways. But yeah, there it is.
Do you know who I think read Dune and really liked it a lot? Was George Lucas, because clearly you see the influences in Star Wars. Obviously, Tatooine is very much like Dune, right?
Yes.
And you look, I'm sure you saw the documentary Alejandro Jodorowsky's Dune, where really his development of the unmade movie ended up influencing all this sci-fi that came about in the 70s. What is your take on the influences of Dune, and how it's just like, once you read it, you can't unsee it once you read the first Dune book? And my personal favorite, I know you brought it up, is God Emperor. I think once you get to God Emperor, it's so trippy. It's so bizarre, all the stuff with Duncan, Idaho, and you get just like, it's amazing, and sort of like tripping through the DNA of humanity. It's awesome. I think it's unfilmable. I don't know that you could ever make a movie.
I want to see Chalamet just wrapped up in that worm body, just talking for 3 hours straight. I want to see it so bad. I know it. You're right. I think it will be practically unfilmable, but God, I'd love to see it.
God Emperor is what we call the Xenu reveal of all Dune, because I think you get to the fourth book and you're like, there's no way he's going to write an entire book about a actual God Emperor from the perspective of a God Emperor. And then you're like, oh, he does. Oh, it's 430 pages of it. You're like, yeah.
It's set like thousands of years in the future, is it?
A monologue. It's a 400-page, essentially a monologue, a description of his world. But then you get to know Frank Herbert quite a bit. If you read his bio about Frank Herbert, you begin to see, oh, he was the God Emperor. Like Frank Herbert himself believed, he walked around in a worm body, but he had pants on.
I've never done mushrooms, but I kind of feel like that is what it would be like, is that book in a way.
Yeah, you're locked in to this. Like sometimes when you take mushrooms, you're just a human face, and the rest of you is gone.
What is the sketch thing on Netflix that you did that has a Dune sketch in it? What was the show? I want to watch it now.
I did a special called The Characters for Netflix, where they gave creators like a half an hour of Netflix time. Right. And we wrote it with our whole sketch group, like Holden McNeely and Ed Larson, 2 members of our sketch group. We wrote it together, and
everybody's heard of it, and people love it.
They're clamoring for it. But we threw a Dune reference in there, and I just remember I was just like, I think we're the only people who've done this. Like it was the pain box.
Yeah.
We did the pain box scene. But when you were saying about Dune influences, man, is it everywhere? It is everywhere. And it really is interesting. I wonder if people even understand how much that was taken from it. Like just the concept of like the idea of giant sandworms that kind of just seemed to be like everywhere after Dune. Because then before Dune, I was like really trying to find out, like, are sandworms from fucking anywhere? Because Frank Herbert his aunts inspired the Bene Gesserit. His sweet, beautiful wife, I guess, was all Jessica. So all of the weird passages about Jessica's voluptuous body all throughout all of those books are, I guess, about his beloved wife, who just seemed like a normal woman, but had total control over Frank. But I can't find anywhere else there's sandworms. But
we were trying to find the sandworm influence. Like, oh, he loved fishing and he'd play with the worms, or he was that weird kid on the schoolyard that would like eat worms for a quarter in front of all the other kids, but it was never. I know that's a dope sandworm, by the way. That is very cool.
Hey, my bro, that's my shy halloot.
I bought this in just out of high school. This is when the David Lynch movie came out, and it's been sitting here in anticipation of the film. Well, so I love that you talk about Timothée Chalamet Ding Dong in the so. What is your take on what this new Dune is going to be? I mean, some stuff is leaked out that it's like people are very high on it. Apparently, you can watch it on HBO Max the week. I will not be doing that, folks. I will actually be going to see it in IMAX. I'm seeing it in the theater for my first viewing. What is your anticipation? Is there some nervousness about it? Apparently, it's not. It's like maybe a third or a half of the book. Like it's not the whole story.
That was the first surprising thing. Henry revealed that to me even recently. I thought it was definitely going to be the whole thing, but that's probably a good thing, because again, I wonder, a lot of my really fascination is after the book one is at the very least, you can say book one is the traditional hero's tale. So at the end of the day, it is the most by the numbers, marketable Hollywood bankable film of the whole series. Maybe Children of Dune could in the same way. Dune Messiah, I'm fascinated to see if they actually attempt it and try to make it a big summer blockbuster. It's about a failed or a hero who hates himself.
Paul rolling around on a grate, imagining a future that hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like the movie, it looks good. It looks very expensive. I think that there's going to be a lot of explosions. I think that they're going to lean heavily on the action, which I would agree with them. I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do the more subtle stuff. But also, Villeneuve is a genius. So if anybody could figure out how to properly do prescience, I think it would be him. It's mostly like, are they going to do that? Are they going to go into the whole psychological edge? Or upon this rereading of Dune, when we went through the first 4 episodes, what I really discovered about Paul this time, because each time it's kind of different, was it's like, Paul's kind of like a moody teenager about this, which is why Timothée Chalamet Ding Dong is perfect for this, because he is that. He's like I need someone to come and bring me a lunch, because he's probably never bought a meal on his own once in his life. And so the idea that he is Paul, I think is good for it. But I wonder if they're going to really do this idea of like a moody prince who's like, I don't want to be the Messiah. I don't want to be. You're making me have this terrible purpose. And I wonder how far they will go, or if he's just going to be Luke Skywalker.
But that's so interesting if they do. I mean, I will say Luke kind of started with that energy in the beginning of the film. Also want to throw it out there that even Frank himself noticed the similarities when Star Wars came out, by the way. He definitely was a little pissed. He was like, what? They stole my thing. But but at least I will say the idea of this kind of moody, gothy hero's tale is at least slightly different from, I mean, we are inundated with the hero's tale lately, just with superhero films in general, things of that nature. So I would hope that they bring this in, as long as they can avoid any awkward stuff like, the rave scene in the Matrix sequel. If they could just avoid that kind of energy, I think they'll do a great job with this.
But they do noticeably say crusade instead of jihad.
Which is interesting, yeah. They do replace.
They just won't say the word jihad, which is fine. But then it was like, well, what else is gonna be like changed about the insides of because crusade is an inherently different word than jihad. Jihad is what happened. It was a religious war. The whole thing is about religion. It's about the messiahs. So I wonder if they can really speak to that, or they're just going to make it a superhero movie.
Oh, and you better believe if they get to God Emperor Dune, they're going to cut every scene where someone asks where his penis is. And that happens at least 5 times in that book.
It's every other scene someone's been like, but does he have a penis? And it's like, Frank wants everybody to know that if he was God Emperor, he'd have a penis.
I'm just curious. Will they continue this? Do you see the influences in like Game of Thrones? I don't know if you were a Game of Thrones watcher.
Sure.
I always saw Game of Thrones. I'm like, yeah, I saw this. It was called Dune. It was politics, religion. It was just like all this stuff sort of like woven in these like warring houses, right? Like that's all. It's Dune in medieval times.
Traps upon traps upon traps.
Yeah,
and all
feints
that
within feints within feints. But I do believe that that's a part of fantasy as a whole. I don't really that part about Game of Thrones, I wouldn't say is totally like it. Definitely incest. Which is also in Dune, which I think is interesting. That's like pronounced thing. Well, that's mostly just speaks to, I think, to Frank Herbert's like 6 years of research into medieval worlds and stuff that he did beforehand, and he really applied into these books. And then Game of Thrones, it's the intrigue. You'd probably say is the closest. It's all of the. But he goes and he takes the wafer, but he does it with his fingers in a way that he's showing me that I know that I'm watching him.
That is probably going to be the trickiest part to actually portray in a filmic sense. Is one of the most interesting things about the series is definitely just the foresight, the really the inner monologues that everybody has leading up, that building of tension, and then he perfectly builds that tension in these books so many times. Is a lot. A thing we talk about a lot in the books themselves is like. Not a ton of action throughout, especially after book one. But even in book one, there is a lot of just ponderances and like setting up of things. I mean, I will at least say this. We already know based off the trailer, the worm looks cool. We can agree on that.
Worm's dope. They got that and they nailed that. But in David Lynch's Dune, which is not, I used to say it was more successful than it is. Now going back through it, I'm like, I still have I have like affection for David Lynch's Dune, but it is not a very good representation of the books.
Right.
But he nails almost to a fault that all of the thought process, because it's like many shots of someone going, and then just voiceover playing over their face. And so like that is what that would look like if you wanted to do that.
I always said Tremors is my Dune. I was always screaming that out front of the schools and out front of the balls. Tremors is my Dune is what I used to say.
Well, it's interesting you brought up that there's not a lot of action in the book. It's sort of glossed over. It's just like there's an invasion, but there's not any details. And it's like, just having read it recently, it's like I forgot, like, oh yeah, that's right. There's not a lot of action that is described, which I think was actually really smart on Frank Herbert's part. Let's leave that to interpretation. Leave it to the filmmakers that are going to make this movie in the far future when this is even possible to achieve, cinematically speaking. So maybe that was a good thing. I'm interested to see what Denis Villeneuve does. I can't get his name. I don't know. I want to know.
No one's name can be said who is a part of this film properly. It is all, it's Shamalama Ding Dong, it's Villeneuve, it's all
Rebecca
good.
Ferguson.
Okay, all right. Got that one. But
there is one scene though in Dune, I forgot. I was like, I hope they do this scene where it's like Thufir Hawat has been saved by the Fremen. They're stuck in this little cave, and he's looking through this and he's watching the Fremen. The first time he's seeing them in action, watching them like an ornithopter drops and like these Sardaukar come out. They're like, but you're just watching it from the distance. You're watching it from Thufir Hawat's POV, and then the Fremen just kind of kill everybody, and then he's just like watching it, and then he watched them go up, take the flight up, and then when the huge Sardaukar like deployment ship shows up, he just very lightly describes how the Fremen ship comes back around and just suicide bombs that one, and it kills 1,000 Sardaukar. And I was like, hopefully they do that scene.
Yeah
that was me. And also the little bats.
Right, yeah.
When they grew up, and they whisper in the ear, they throw it away, and it goes someplace. That's fucking sweet too.
Which is a Game of Thrones kind of listed.
True, yeah.
It's so unbelievable. What? So I'm really surprised, like just as a Dune fan from high school, that other people have not you guys must be getting fan mail at this point for just like the layers that you go into and just like the production value of your podcast. I mean, obviously mine is like, I'm just using StreamYard for us to all chat. You put production value into this with music and original like sketches and just like, it's amazing the amount of work that you put into it. How has the reaction not just been universal praise?
People have been very cool. I will say what's funny for us is probably the sketch writing has been the easiest part of the whole deal. And the sketch performance is that's our background. That's like what we first got in on together. In fact, in a way, like I would say my favorite part is just getting to secretly write sketches with Henry again, and that's like so fun and wonderful. Big shout outs to Rob, our editor.
Rob Oakey.
He's been
phenomenal. He's adding a lot of that production value. Yeah. Honestly,
we're really literally just like, can you add like sword swoosh noises here? And then it just, he makes it. Yeah. So it's literally just two stoners screaming at him, like make this sound awesome, and then he does the work. Yeah.
Our show is what we've been called more often. We finally discovered our fan base. So our show's for the rude Duners. It's for the Duners that are not the Duners that are out there that are not necessarily like super serious about it. Because I think that there's what we're seeing. There are definitely kind of like camps. There are people that take Dune very, very seriously. And because even I will never say I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form. Like this is just an interpretation of what we read in the books. And it's kind of funny the mail I get when people talk about, I actually interpreted it this way. And they say something, I was like, damn, it's like you saw a whole other thing than I saw. So that to me is very illuminating. It's just how many ways there are to approach the material. But for me, it's about making it vaguely accessible for people that are high all the time.
Because that's what's funny to me is that like it's not like I'm getting a ton of like people hitting me up, but the people who do hit me up, like I got an email from someone, I don't know how they got my email address, paragraphs on prescience. Just paragraphs. So it's just like the reaction from individuals is like really that so enthusiastic. Normally you get a couple lines, thank you so much. Like I listen to your podcast while I like do my like day job, blah, 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 blah. Instead I'm getting just like mental breakdowns of like brain chemistry.
People talking about they having prescient dreams. People talking about book interpretations. But I also don't want us to be sort of like gatekeepers whatsoever. Our whole point is I want to release Dune. I think everyone should be.
We're trying to open the gate. Yeah, that's the whole thing. I think we're trying to open the gate on stuff like this. I think Dune is our first series. We may move on to other stuff. And I think the approach is always going to be, I think, finding stuff that some people may find impenetrable. Other people are obsessed with it every day of their lives. How do we bring those people together so that we can all become rude Dune? Yeah. Oh my God. I can't believe you just mentioned Tenet. That movie.
I mean, it's spoil Tenet, but that's
why are we doing this? I don't want to talk shit about a different movie on this film podcast, but just to bring all those people together, and everybody's got a rude Duner in their heart, in their feet. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we're trying to bring that out. We're trying to bring out the, we're trying to feed the spice.
I view it as a naked woman and a naked man on a worm riding around Palm Springs.
Did you ever see the sci-fi series? I mean, they went all the way through like Children of Dune with that.
Henry recently watched it. Yeah.
It's in the CD. Don't worry, it's in the DVD player right now. It's now. Yeah, man, it's interesting.
It was, I feel bad I felt like it's like the lack of budget was just infuriating and what did you do?
They try, man. It's one of those, it's made for TV. You watch it. They made some wild changes for no reason. And then some shit is exactly the same. It's more accurate than any other portrayal of Dune that I've seen.
Right.
And the stuff that they change is so weird. Like it's stuff that I don't really understand. They definitely make Leto 2 and Ganima. It looks like the moonlighting. I don't like it when I see when it's siblings, but they're like, when people sit with their knees inside of each other's legs.
I hate it.
We don't need them to be outwardly flirting with their brother and sister. Everybody is trying to get them to.
Yeah, I was about to say all through the book. So that is not an improper interpretation. All through that book, people are like, what you two should do. Brother and sister, right? But also, what if you fucked?
And what I mean? No. All of Children of Dune is very fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love all, whenever you can interpret it, man, Jodorowsky's Dune, what that would have been.
Yeah, that broke I'm going to make an admission here because I think I texted you, Henry, after I watched it. I got a little emotional at the end of that movie. Like I really did. And because it does break my heart, all of the And who knows? It could have been. It was either going to be the greatest translation of Dune ever made, or the most batshit like out Lynch's Dune, this, that, and the other, right? But I got a little emotional just thinking about. I just think about all the projects that had such goodwill behind them in this business that got undercut just because somebody in a suit somewhere didn't get it. And worms.
People hate worms. People like dogs. Make them a dog.
What about a big dog movie? And that movie was Beethoven. And that film that came to be ended up being the very successful Beethoven franchise. So that guy made a lot of money. But
I actually did a book about that called "The 50 Greatest Movies Never Made." That was about like unmade great projects that could have been great had they been made. Some even like stopped in the middle. But
that Nick Cage Superman. That Nick Cage Superman movie pops in my head every once in a while. I would have loved to have seen outlandish cokehead Superman.
My buddy John Schnepp did a documentary about that where there's footage.
Oh, wow.
Have you seen that documentary? It's amazing. You see footage of Nick Cage workshopping being Clark Kent, but he has this sort of different interpretation. He's got like a Mickey Mouse t-shirt and a blazer on, and Nick Cage is Nick Cage in every movie, but he's this sort of weirdo Nick Cage where he hears a comedian 2 miles away tell a joke, so he's laughing to himself, but no one else can hear the joke because he's sort of using his Superman powers in his just like daily life. It was a really interesting interpretation. So you see him on video. It's worth seeing the doc just for this footage of Nick Cage workshopping what his Superman and what his Clark Kent would have been, which is very different than any interpretation. But I guess this is what docs are for, right?
Yeah.
How far are you going to go into the books? Are you going to go beyond God?
We are doing the first 6 books, but we are doing 5 and 6 lighter than we did the first 4.
Henry, do you want to give a breakdown of like what the book like? All right, so it's the first 6 are actually written by Frank Herbert,
and then Brian Herbert wrote 5 and 6 are an incomplete second trilogy within Dune. So there is a 7th book written by Brian Herbert, his son, no one's ever loved a father like Brian Herbert loves his father, and he wrote the 7th book. There are 14 other books. There's including the 6th, the 7th, there are 7 other prequels. And I think there might be a sequel. Maybe I'm incorrect, but they cover the Butlerian Jihad. There's a Mentat book. There's a Bene Gesserit book. There's all of that. But we're going to go through the first 6. And 5 and 6 we're not doing as in full detail as we did the first 4 because the 7th was not written by Frank Herbert. The goal is to kind of just cover Frank Herbert's Dune. But what we're supposed to come back for a 13th episode when the movie comes out. And a part of which I think is really going to be fun. We'll do like a review of the movie for Spotify. Yeah. But then I am making Holden and I read the 7th book because I've never read the 7th book by Brian Herbert. And so then we will talk about the completion of it. But mostly the reason why we're covering 5 and 6 is to talk about. I was reading a really interesting breakdown of Dune talking about the fractal nature of the series and about how ideas spin off ideas and spin off ideas and spin off ideas, and that the second trilogy, the only way to describe it is Muppet Babies Dune, because everybody comes back as babies. So it's this thing where you're just back to the start, but you have babies, and he just loves Children of Dune. He loves 7-year-olds.
I need to be released from this. So I need to be released from Henry's. It's not even just the series. It's like Henry has said to me the fractal nature of Dune no less than like 10 times in the past couple days. I'm just starting to lose my mind here, but it's been fun.
The macro meets the micro, Holden.
Well, gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, on the Film Thread podcast. I'm just a fan of your series. I think it's amazing. It's the best Dune podcast I've ever heard.
Dude, thank you so much. Honestly, your enthusiasm is like really amazing.
Me feel good about
it makes me feel so good. Because we go into a room and we scream about Dune for hours at a time throughout a week, throughout several weeks.
We just did this so that I could stop speaking to my wife about Dune.
And it's so cool to see this, especially at this time, when we aren't able to really get out there and interact with people face to face. So you're like the face of this first wave of support on this podcast.
You listen. That's incredible. What do you smell like?
Yeah. What's your home address so we can come over in a little bit and just hang out? No, but yeah, it is. It's really cool. Thank you so much.
It's just like whenever you go, like I've been going to Comic-Con for decades, San Diego Comic-Con, and you see like there's certain fandoms and whatnot, and the Dune is sort of like that's the fandom that doesn't really you don't see a lot of Dune. If you Google, Dune cosplay,
yes, yeah,
not a lot comes up. You don't.
Right.
We talked about this on an episode we were going to do, and we scrapped it. But my main thing that I was talking about is how the one thing that bums me out about the Dune fandom is that there's no like Halloween store costume.
Yeah, because
I couldn't look up. I wanted a skin suit. I want a still suit.
We were talking about,
and I couldn't find it.
We were even talking about, we were going to try to find still suits online and then go out to like the desert because we're out here on the West Coast and do some sort of psychedelic Dune experience in leather still suits in the desert under the hot, hot sun. And then we sort of gave up on it.
I know how you can make a cheap one. There is a service that you can look up where you can take a body tight, right? And you can have anything printed onto it. So you can actually get a high-res photo. If you can get a high-res photo of a still suit, you can actually print it onto some body tights. That would be that'd be a cheap version. But yeah,
that's what we're doing.
And just put a black straw up our nose.
Yeah, black straw. You're good.
That's dope.
Do it.
Oh yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, cool. I love those fandoms that are very small, but like you'll see it. Like I also go to Dragon Con every year too, which is
hell yeah.
Man, I love Dragon Con. I miss it so bad.
I love Dragon Con. It's like nerdy gras. It's my favorite.
Yeah.
So I once dressed as Logan 5 from Logan's Run, and didn't even know that there were just a few other people that were also dressed as you see some Sandmen out there. But that's another one of those like insular fandoms that not a lot of people know about. So I look forward to your podcast on Logan's Run. I hope that you do it just for only.
Yeah, run off. Like you get that, like when people yelling at you.
Oh my God. Thank you for taking the time to do this. This is
hell yeah.
Normally on the podcast, I interview indie filmmakers, actors, and whatnot. So just when it's so funny. Your publicist who approached me, I just said, I listened to the podcast. I am listening to it now. I'm now reading your press release. How do we make this happen? And it's just your enthusiasm for everything Dune. I can't wait to hear the review. I can't.
Yeah,
it'll be fun. I can't wait to see
it.
I mostly just like it doesn't even matter anymore. I'm just so excited to be back in a movie theater.
Yeah, we saw Godzilla vs. Kong even in the theater, and it was so
I will
awesome.
Watch Goatsy the film in a theater right now. I am
keep it clean.
I want to see it in the big screen. Oh, the sound.
But yeah, I would urge everyone who's even considering watching this movie, don't skip HBO Max. Go to the theater and see it. Risk imminent death to see this film. It will be worth it.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much. And just for those listening, watching, subscribe to this podcast. It is incredible. It is a perfect primer leading up to the release of the movie. You are doing God Emperor's work on the podcast. You just have to
follow the golden path. All I do is I look into prescience to make sure that the golden path continues.
Thank you so much.
What he said. Thank you.